Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up in just a few moments, we have the Scandals segment brought to you by Caldwell Soames, featuring my good friend Imran Ansari of Aidala, Bertuna, Kamins, otherwise known as ABK Law, right here in New York City. He's also a regular contributor and legal analyst on Law and Crime and Court TV. Today, we're chatting about the story of two men who were exonerated in the 1965 assassination of Malcolm X and how they're to receive a $36 million settlement after lawsuits were filed on their behalf against both the city and the state of New York last year. Muhammad Aziz and his co-defendant, Khalil Islam, were exonerated back in November of 2021. Mind you, Muhammad Aziz, a U.S. Navy veteran and the father of 6 children, was 26 when he was arrested for the 1965 murder of Malcolm X at the Audubon Ballroom. He spent 20 years in prison and was released on parole in 1985. 2 years later, Khalil Islam was released after serving 22 years. They each appealed their convictions and always maintained their innocence. Mr. Aziz recently turned 84, but tragically, Mr. Islam died in 2009 at the age of 74 before seeing his name cleared. All this a result of outrageous government misconduct and violations of constitutional rights. Justice delayed for too long is justice basically denied. And here to chat wrongful convictions, systemic racism, and the power of the Netflix documentary, Who Killed Malcolm X? Joining me now is my dear friend, legal expert and partner at ABK Law, Imran Ansari. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Zen, thank you for having me. Always great to be here.
Okay, so although this brings measure of justice to these individuals who spent decades in prison and bore the stigma of being falsely accused of murdering an iconic figure. This is terrible. It still feels extremely raw, Imran, and bittersweet to hear the details. How did 2 innocent men stay behind bars for 2 decades in such a high-profile case? Please explain.
Right. So you have Muhammad Aziz and Khalil Islam, who unfortunately has passed away, spending years of their life in prison, and now they've been exonerated. So how does that happen, Zen? Well, I think that back in 1965, when these 2 gentlemen were convicted, there was really a rush for justice, if you will, in the assassination of Malcolm X. And it was determined that the government, the NYPD and the FBI in many ways, sort of dropped the ball in the investigation, and the evidence that was presented to put these 2 individuals in jail were essentially tainted. What's really interesting here, Zen, is that you said that Netflix documentary. This is another case where you have a movie, a podcast, or something like that really bringing an injustice to the attention of the public, bringing something which has been gone or old for many years, if you will, or happened years ago, back into the public eye, and people react. And that got this case on the radar back in court, and these 2 individuals were exonerated. Of course, Muhammad Aziz gets to see the light of day as a free man, but unfortunately, Khalil Islam passed away. He does not get to see his name cleared of his conviction, but there's a big money settlement from New York State and city for these individuals, so the family of Khalil Islam and the family and Muhammad Aziz. But how does that buy back freedom? And I say it doesn't. No, there's no price tag.
There's no price tag. Now, you said something interesting. I'm going to go back to the Netflix documentary, Who Killed Malcolm X, in just a bit. But Aziz and Islam, then known as Norman 3X Butler and Thomas 15X Johnson, and a third man, were convicted of murder in March of 1966. Okay, so you made the timeline is this happened in 65, 66. All 3 are convicted. Now, they were sentenced to life in prison, but Talmaji Hayer, the confessed assassin of Malcolm X, who was caught at the scene, testified at trial that Aziz and Islam were not involved in the killings. The 2 offered alibis, and no physical evidence linked them to the crime. The case hinged on eyewitnesses. That's it. And although there were inconsistencies in the testimony, the eyewitnesses were the ones that basically drove this home. How does one get convicted of such a crime with 0 evidence? This is a decrepit legal system that now has almost trickled into current day. It's very confusing for the American public to put these timelines together. And then when you go back and you look at why was light shed on this case? Well, it wasn't reopened, like you mentioned, until interest was renewed back in 2020 following the release of Who Killed Malcolm X, which was a very, very well put together documentary that basically followed the work of independent historian Abdur Rahman Muhammad, who spent decades, and I mean, like, he really, really knew the case well. He investigated the killing. Only after that doc aired did Cyrus Vance Jr., who was the former Manhattan District Attorney at the time, decided that there was enough evidence to look at this. So I'm glad Hollywood is the acting commander-in-chief here, and they call themselves professionals. What do you say to that?
Yeah, no, Zen, but I think it's just indicative of the sort of world we live in now, where media, including social media and the internet, has extreme power. And you see people, you see documentary makers, you see people who have podcasts going in, looking at old cases, right? Things, unsolved mysteries at times, right? And they bring it to the public's attention again. The public sort of rallies around this cause, and then things happen. You heard Cy Vance did take a look at this case after that documentary, which is a great documentary, and really looked at the evidence, what came into court, which these individuals were convicted on. It wasn't sufficient, Zen. And you got to put it in the context of that time, right? You have the civil rights movement in full swing. You have the Nation of Islam really gaining momentum and power in the African-American communities. And you also have a power struggle within that organization, which many people feel led to the assassination of Malcolm X. And, you know, when you have people who are in this context, power struggle, a justice system which really didn't necessarily look at the rights of African Americans at that time, to have the sort of crucible and the perfect storm, if you will, to have injustice. And we feel that when you look back at the evidence in this case, many people seem to be quote unquote puppets. That was something that was used to describe what happened there. Puppets of the FBI or the NYPD, or those who were looking to receive that conviction, and maybe false confessions were had. Maybe people saw things that they didn't really see, but felt compelled to say that. So, you know, you have this real injustice. And of course, now you have a multi-million-dollar settlement from both the city and the state. You have $10 million from the city and $26 million from the state of New York to compensate the family of Khalid Islam and Muhammad Aziz for all those years in prison.
Now, I want to get your opinion on one thing, but obviously this is serious. It's unacceptable violations of the law and the public trust in one of the highest profile cases of American history. Now, the settlement, like you just mentioned, it comes after Aziz and the estate of Khalid Islam. They sued, right, the city. They seek total, I think, $40 million for the malicious prosecution, denial of due process rights, and even government misconduct. And they filed two multi-million-dollar civil lawsuits in December of 2021 aimed at New York State government. How serious is systemic racism in our country, Imran, especially in our justice system, in your opinion?
Well, Zen, it's something that really we have to look at with a serious, eye to remedy. There is racism in the justice system. It's now, I think over time, Zen, I have an optimistic view. I hope I'm not naive. But as the justice system gets more integrated and becomes more of a fabric of the community and what America is made out of, then I'm hoping that there's going to be those changes in the justice system and there will be more equally applied justice. Of course, we're talking about this case, which was at a time when justice was not applied at all equally to the African-American community. And, you have to think about who were deciding those cases at that time, who were deciding what charges to bring. Over time, Zen, I'm hoping as, again, things progress in the justice system, as judges now and lawyers and those who are in law enforcement are more representative of the melting pot, if you will, hopefully some of those things will be remedied. And you see cases now which are addressing that sort of disparity in the justice system or in law enforcement. And I think over time with those cases, with precedent being set, we will see some real change.
Wise words have Not been spoken better than you, my friend. Well, you hit it right on. You said it exactly and articulated it as well as I could have, coming from, the job that you do. But wrongful convictions and trauma of systemic racism is very, very real, especially for brown and Black individuals, and this has to stop. I thank you for coming on, always shedding so much light on very, very high profile cases. And of course, you are the legal contributor at hand for our show for a reason, because you're not only entertaining, but you're also so full of insight and knowledge. Thank you for sharing.
Thanks for having me, Zen.
Guys, you definitely have to check out Imran Ansari at ABK Law. Now listen, Aziz spent 20 years in prison and more than 55 years living with the hardship and indignity attendant to being unjustly branded as a convicted murderer of one of the most important civil rights leaders in history. Think of that. And then Islam spent 22 years in prison and died still hoping to clear his name. How sad is this? That was our Scandal segment brought to you by Caldwell Soames. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeartRadio. Make sure you check out Imran on the gram at Imran Ansari ESQ, or head to their website, aidalalaw.com. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Caldwell Soames Incorporated, investing globally in transformative businesses like Original Digital Corporation, or ODC. ODC develops advanced consumer and commercial fintech solutions such as OG Pay, which will transform the way you manage your money. From sending and receiving money globally for free, paying for goods and services in person and online, pay bills, buy and sell digital currencies, all while earning interest. OG Pay is easy to set up, FDIC insured, and your information is secured. Check out ogpay.com.